Hey guys, I'm really excited about today's podcast. I was fortunate enough to be able to speak with Karissa Cook. Karissa is a professional volleyball player who graduated from Stanford in an engineering degree and played all 4 years on their indoor volleyball team, was a 3-time academic All-American honorable mention and Pac-12 freshman player of the year. So she has quite an extensive knowledge of volleyball. And I was really interested to hear how a professional athlete gets to travel, the ups and the downs of it. And as expected, she provided some great tips, some of the do's and the don'ts of traveling, some advantages of using different apps, one being Turo, Turo, a car rental app similar to Airbnb. And I think a lot of my listeners might benefit from hearing that. So really excited to talk to a professional athlete. And I'd really like to thank her for the time, and I wish her the best of luck out in Chicago next week. So here we go, another Travel Wins podcast, this time with Karissa Cook. On my Travel Wins podcast today is Karissa Cook. Karissa currently competes professionally on the AVP Tour. She's had a stellar career as a volleyball player, played at Stanford, got her engineering degree at Stanford after 4 years. What was your position there, Karissa?
I was a setter for the indoor team.
Okay. And then after Stanford, you decided to go over to the University of Hawaii and get your master's degree in engineering. And while doing that, you also got your came in runner-up in the beach volleyball and national championships. Not only a very smart person, but would you call yourself a dedicated person?
Dedicated, and I think super lucky just to have kind of had the opportunities align. You know, I think the Stanford and the Hawaii opportunities both kind of were a mix of like being pretty dedicated, but also having an extreme amount of luck to have the chance to go do both those things kind of fall in my lap. So yeah, a little bit of both.
Well, for me, I always say a lot of it's timing.
Yes, 100%.
You know, you got to put yourself in a position and work hard and all that, but a lot of it's just timing. I mean,
absolutely.
Same thing that's happened with my job. You've had quite a bit of success in the last 2 years on the AVP tour. You've had your partner, Katie Spieler.
Yeah, so Katie and I met out at University of Hawaii. We were not partners, but we were roommates. And then we're coming up on the AVP Chicago this week. It's kind of the last tour stop. But the first tournament that we ever played together was the same tournament 2 years ago, and it went well, so we've stuck it out, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, stuck it out. You've taken 5th, you've taken 7th. You're on the main draw now.
Yeah, that is a luxury that we were not anticipating to have. We're pretty much all of last year. The way that they run the tournaments is if you're not in the top kind of point getters, you have to play this qualifier tournament every Thursday, and we were always like 10 points shy of being in the main draw last year, so we'd always have to play the Thursday tournament. This year's been great.
The Thursday tournament's up to 4 matches, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can get lucky with the bigger draws and only have to play 2, but this year the draw's been so big that, yeah, a lot of teams are having to play 4 tournaments just to get into the tournament. So, yeah, single elimination. Sometimes you lose. Sometimes you're just dead tired by the time you get to the tournament. It's really hard. And
you guys travel. I mean, you've been fortunate enough to play in Manhattan Beach and Hermosa in the last couple of weeks, but now you're going to Chicago. I know they had a tournament in New York.
Yeah.
And then you have the AVP next level.
Yeah, so actually one of the coolest tournaments that we've done this year, kind of in addition to the New Yorks and the Austin and Seattle and all the regular tour stops, was AVP Next up in Seaside, Oregon.
Yep.
And yeah, we got back from that like two or 3 weeks ago, and it was just such a cool town because it wasn't one of these big cities. So yeah, we kind of get to go all over the place, which is really cool.
What are some of the other places you've traveled for volleyball?
So they're pretty consistent about where they put the AVP tour stop locations. So I think I kind of mentioned all of those, like San Francisco's another stop, so that was close to my kind of hometown for the past 3 years. And then they're adding a tour stop in Hawaii, which is pretty tough to qualify for, but our fingers are crossed.
Yeah.
And then last year we did another tour entirely, so it's called the Norseca Tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to Cuba and Veradero, and we went to Ochos Rios, Jamaica, to play tournaments there against kind of some like North American, Central American kind of country representatives, which is really, really interesting and so much fun. Those are really cool.
I was going to say, what's it like traveling to Cuba? Not many people can say they've been to even
Yeah.
Cuba.
Yeah, it was really interesting. There was like very different sides to Cuba that we saw. You know, kind of like the area around, we got left at the airport. The communication wasn't great. So we got to hang out at a Cuban airport for longer than most people would want to. And then had the joy of taking a taxi cab to the other side of Cuba. So we kind of got to see like the very real part of Cuba there, which is really neat.
Sure.
But also like a little bit, you just kind of thrown off. I think when you get to a place and your travel plans are completely wrong and you're in a country you don't know how to operate in, it was like, okay, I don't really know what's going on.
Now, are you with people, like the Norseca people, you know, are there people there, or they just say, hey, land here, get to here, and be on your way?
You know, like ideally you're with people, but the two tournaments that I was with, I somehow got kind of either forgot or left or I messed up. But I ended up having to take two taxis in Cuba and Jamaica. Where it was like, all right, I might be going to the wrong place, but everyone's been nice, so we're just going to roll with it.
And how did you do in those tournaments, even after all your travel mishaps?
I think I want to say in Cuba we got fourth, and I think in Jamaica we got third. So yeah, they're really good tournaments. Like the top level of the tournaments were really strong, and then there were kind of some teams that were, you know, from like smaller island countries that didn't have as much volleyball exposure, so they were at like a little bit lower level.
Right.
But yeah, I would say the top like 4 or 5 teams in both those tournaments were really strong, which is cool.
So even with all your travel delays and mishaps, still were able to focus.
Yeah, the travel for those two in particular was not pretty. Because the problem with those tournaments also is that you have to qualify for them, and they don't host the qualifiers until like 2, maybe 3 weeks in advance.
Oh, wow.
So you're kind of booking travel last minute too, unless you're extremely confident, which I would never book travel based on that. So, so we had some, you know, like sleeping in airports and all that fun stuff.
All the glamorous parts.
All the glamour, yeah.
A lot of glamour. That's when I travel, everyone's like, "Oh, you're so lucky. You get to go." And I'm like, "Wow, I've stayed in some really bad hotels. I've had 3-hour delays. I've had missed rental cars."
Totally.
But we don't post about the bad stuff. We tend not to.
Yeah, for those tournaments, you only saw like the pictures of like us in clear blue water and not the
exactly.
$200 we won to try to cover all those flights. It's pretty funny.
Exactly. And I guess that's why I started the podcast. Is a lot of people have perceptions of whether a musician or a professional athlete, and they just have this wonderful, glamorous life, and then there's the reality of it.
Yeah. I mean, like Instagram is awesome, but it's definitely not the 99% of the experience. It's kind of like, I don't know. I think Katie and I both try to post a lot on the like stories of just like ridiculous things that happen, because I think if you get caught up in the, you know, oh my God, look how much fun they're having, it's like you won't stick with it because it's just not realistic.
Well, and you ended up being the assistant coach at Stanford's beach volleyball team, correct?
Yeah. So I'm just leaving that position after 3 really awesome years. Kind of get to go back to Stanford and help start the beach team there. And then Andrew Fuller and Lauren Fendrick, who are both kind of beach legends in their own right, have kind of taken the reins. So, and then they're bringing in a really amazing person to replace me, which I'm so sad about, but extremely happy. So, yeah.
It all works out.
It all works out.
Did you have you mentioned that you and Katie tried to show the stories of kind of the absurdities of it. Did you have a lot of conversations with the girls coming into the Stanford program about that?
Yeah, and I think we had the extreme, I don't know, like good fortune's the right word, because we recruited all these people. Like we had the kind of privilege to get to know everybody coming into our program, through the recruiting process. And I think we really tried to bring in, and still try to bring in, people who are in it for the kind of blue collar reasons to play beach volleyball, as silly as that sounds, as opposed to the glorious, beautiful highlight reel version. Yeah. And so I think a lot of them are pretty aware, and so many of them are like the most extremely absurd human beings I've ever met. So we'll even let them take over. Like one of the I was gonna say one of the cool things we started doing last year was like on those long road trips. So we went to Hawaii last year with the team. Went to LA, not a long road trip, but we went for like 5 days. We would kind of give over the login information to the student athletes, so they would get to like post whatever they wanted for the 24 hours. And as a coach, you're like seeing just absurd like hotel room things on the Instagram story at like midnight, and you're like, oh my god, how late are you staying up, please? But at the same time, it kind of gives this inside look of like, their student athletes are working really hard in school, they're having to catch these plane rides across the country, and then they have to compete the very next day. They're still like just being kids and having fun and making the best of all the absurdities. So,
and then still having Stanford level classes.
Yeah, and some of them are doing just it makes what I did there, and I struggled at times because just the workload's pretty tough. But we've got a lot of people trained to be doctors, and we've got a chemical engineer, and we've got a neuroscientist like in training, and they're amazing. Yeah.
Just so my listeners understand, you were named a 3-time Pac-12 All-Academic your sophomore, junior, and senior year, and you got your master's in engineering. So,
yeah, I like school. I wish I could go back, but we'll see. Maybe someday.
So you saying that the girls are really achieving at a high level academically?
Yeah. They're next level. They're unbelievable.
When you were recruiting, were you going after indoor players that have beach tendencies, or is it now becoming a thing to be a beach player?
I think in the early years it was a lot of kind of crossover athletes. And then at Stanford we still let our indoor team play both sports. So we do have a lot of players from our indoor team who are also amazing. They just got the number 1 ranking going into this year. So they'll come out and play for us. So we do still get that, but beach volleyball at the juniors level has taken off, and these tournaments that we're getting to recruit at have been just enormous, and people flying from every part of the country to come kind of compete and get seen has been really taking off. So I think it's more beach recruiting now.
That's got to be one of the bigger changes, because when I grew up, everybody played indoor, and then they kind of played beach on the side.
Exactly. Yeah, it's totally 180'd.
And I know the local, I'm in Redondo Beach, and the high school has a beach team, and so I know some of the Miracosta and some of the other schools have beach teams, which was unheard of back in my day.
Yeah, you can play beach year round now. It's so interesting.
And I'm sure it'll get to the club level and the traveling teams and.
Oh yeah, they've got it already.
Middle schools.
Totally,
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, the big tournament there's kind of a series of big tournaments in July that are hosted, here in Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach, but there's teams from Virginia, there's teams from Florida coming out. The Hawaii teams Outrigger Club brought a bunch of teams. So you can almost do like a juniors beach volleyball podcast at this point. It's gotten that big. So it's cool.
That's pretty cool though, yeah. I mean, and now you've been on TV, and it's interesting to see beach volleyball kind of grow up.
Yeah.
I mean, they had
a lot of features.
They had the Karch Karai era,
and
then Kerry Walsh. So it's interesting to really see that sport blossom.
Yeah, it is. It's really neat.
As a traveling professional athlete, and then even as a coach and as a D1 player, what was the work-life balance? We talked a little bit about how difficult it is to be in school, maintaining grades while you're playing at the highest level. Even as a professional athlete, how do you balance that?
Yeah, I think the kind of running joke in professional beach volleyball is there's only a handful of people kind of at the top who are able to do being a professional athlete really, truly full-time.
Right.
And then the rest of us are almost in this kind of, unless you're winning tournaments, you're still kind of in this like student athlete type existence where you've got another full-time commitment, which might be like a 9-to-5 job. It might be coaching. It might be, you name it. But you've got to have some other source of income or some very good investments maybe. But I know for me, I'm constantly working to make sure to pay rent and like live a good life while still finding time to train. So I don't know. I think the balance is pretty much the same as when I was a student athlete. It definitely less like sleepless nights of having to stay up all night to do math problems, but I'd say the same kind of like stresses and same kind of, dividing of time.
Is it difficult having relationships and where you're either working, training, traveling for the tour? How do you balance personal relationships with friends, families, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever?
Yeah. I think just being on the road is so hard. And I think so for me, my boyfriend of 5 years is also a Stanford student athlete. And he's been playing professional football for the last 4 years and trying to figure out if he can do it this year too. So for him, it's kind of like always been, he's gone 6 months of the year and then he's like here full time around 24/7, 6 months of the year. And then I'm kind of gone intermittently, like mostly weekends. So it's always kind of this like interesting negotiation. So when we're together, it's like we're together for, full days on end. And it's like, okay, please get away from me. And then when you're apart for a little longer than you'd want to be. But, you kind of fall into routine. So I think on that front, it kind of helps to have a professional athlete who pretty much understands, like, that's just the grind. Like, it's just part of it.
Yeah. And vice versa for you, understanding his grind.
Exactly. And I think it's kind of worked out. Like, the beach volleyball community is so friendly that most of my friends are in this community also.
Yeah.
My brother is also a beach volleyball player who's taking this year off for injury, and his fiance is a professional indoor player. So it's kind of like everybody's almost doing the same. Like, you're training, you're practicing, you're playing, you're off on the road, and then you're back. And when everyone's back, we have barbecue.
Exactly. No, it was interesting to watch a lot of, at the Manhattan, a lot of the other players actually cheering on.
Oh, yeah.
Their friends.
Awesome.
It's
awesome.
Like you just competed and lost to them, but now you're cheering them on for their next match.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's always like that. Like there's,
Wow.
It's kind of fun when there's some rivalries, but I think for the most part, it's such it's a really empathetic community that like everyone kind of knows, and you train with everybody. It's just like a nice, friendly place to be.
Well, there's always going to be rivalries. There's always going to be people you want to beat really bad, but it was that was interesting to watch. And I know one of my daughter's friends played professional soccer, and I think they made $28,000 a year starting. And she was a drafted first-round player.
Yeah.
So unless you have the big names, and the sponsorship contracts and all that, how much does sponsorships come into play for players?
I think it really depends. I mean, we haven't pursued it that much. I always felt kind of a little bit like I was in a weird position while still coaching to pursue sponsorships.
Yeah.
It was funny, like 2 of the 3 people I reached out to, I found out that then they have a daughter who's of recruitable age, and it was like, oh God, this could be like a conflict of interest.
NCAA violations, yeah.
Yeah, so just to totally avoid that, I stayed out of it unless it was like free sunscreen, free bikinis.
Yeah, exactly.
And, unless you've kind of got I would either say like a relationship with the company or one of the kind of top athletes who's getting a lot of exposure, playing on the TV matches a lot, or kind of have like a branded look that you are able to garner sponsorships with. It's definitely not a huge part of it. But it's absolutely helpful. Like, I don't know. I think it seems like there's more than there is, but yeah.
Well, yeah, and I work for a clothing manufacturer in the Western industry, so every time I work a show, I invariably get the athletes come up to me and say, "Oh, how do I get sponsored by you guys?" And it's like, after 400 athletes come up to you, and you're like, "Oh my God, we can't, you can't do this." So you end up looking for the little things.
Yeah.
Some of it's a unique look or different exposure, that type of thing. And I always wondered how AVP players, men's and women, do they go after social media to grow their following so they can go get sponsorship?
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of go down that route for sure. I mean, and I think you can get as many sponsorships as much time you put into it.
Right.
And yeah, Katie and I just need to like get someone to counsel us on that because both of us are such non-social media people. But yeah, it's definitely, it's helpful when people do want to support in different ways. So we don't say no to people helping, that's for sure.
Any bit helps, I guess.
Yeah.
But some of it, some of the sponsorships that we do as a company to the rodeo athletes is just giving them clothes. Jeans, boots, some shirts. So that's the stuff they're wearing out. And so it's not even always about money. Sometimes it's just product. Absolutely. Yep. And then the bigger athletes, we'll help them out with money for entry fees. Mhm. Yeah, it sounds like it's a really similar kind of structure between rodeo and beach volleyball. Well, that was what I was interested in. Is, I mean, if you go to Seaside, Oregon, and you have a bad wrist, in warm-ups, and you don't win any of your matches, you don't make any money. Is that correct? Nope. Then you are just taking a nice trip to Seaside. You hopefully make the trip a little better. Exactly. Yeah, that's just like the Cowboys, the rodeo guys. They have to drive. A lot of them live in Dallas or in Texas, and they'll go to a rodeo in Oregon, and they have to travel trailer their horses. Oh my gosh! They go there. And a steer wrestler that I interviewed on my podcast, their event is roughly 5 seconds long. Wow! So if you're a 5.8 seconds, you don't make any money. If you're a 5 second, and you still got to feed your horse, yourself, gas. That is tough. That makes what we do. We get on a $99 Southwest flight with a ball in our backpack, and if you lose, it sucks. But if you win, it's like, oh, okay. Hey, that was nice. Well, get a little bonus. Yeah, and it's the same. When the Cowboys come to the rodeos and we set up autograph signings for them. And they're just, a lot of them are like, man, they're thinking about their last event where they didn't make any money and they spent, 3 days driving. And yet here they are, the aspirations and goals that the younger people want to become. Mm-hmm. It's the same way. It's they get the press and they get the interviews and all that, but yet they can still not make any money. Right. It's very real. The struggle is real. What advice would you have for up and coming players, college level, high school players, as far as traveling? What kind of advice would you give the incoming players at Stanford or even your friends at the beach? Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that Katie and I have really leaned on this year, because beach is like a partnership sport, was finding ways that if we traveled together, we could save a lot of money. So I think she signed up for like a credit card last year, but it gave her a companion pass on flights. Yep. So for Southwest also, where it's really nice. Like I don't really care about the quality of a flight. Like I usually just pass out or like play video games, but just the ability to like change your flight. Because if you lose at 8 a.m. on a Thursday and you want to go home, having that Sunday flight kind of sucks. So she actually has a companion pass with Southwest. So we usually book a flight with her thing and we'll travel together, which means that, if she buys the flight, my flight is free, and then I just usually Venmo her, PayPal her for the other half. And then we just usually do like cheap Airbnbs until, because the AVP only covers hotels during the nights that you're in the tournament, and we usually like to get there a day early, or if you're not in the tournament yet and you have to qualify, you don't know. So a lot of friends' couches or Airbnbs, a lot of shared Lyft and Ubers. I've been meaning to try, though. One of my friends said that, at least for Seaside we used it because it's a little bit farther of a drive. There's an app called Turo where it's kind of like Airbnb for cars. I guess you can rent people's cars. So, how do you spell that? I think it is Turo. I'll put that in the link because that's a great travel. Yeah, I mean, my friend rented a Range Rover and we got to drive in this beautiful, like, very nice vehicle for 4 days. And it was, I remember splitting the cost, and it was much less than it would have been had I rented through Hertz and gotten the compact that I usually do. So yeah, exactly. That's a great tip because I'm going to have to look into that. Yeah, and I guess what they do is, like, because it's just like an owner's car, they will drive to the airport and meet you there, so you don't have to, like, go to the rental car spot, which I would pay a premium just to not deal with the rental car process. So I hear you. Yeah, I guess they drop it off for you and everything.
yeah, check it out.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than having to take a 5 or 10 minute shuttle bus from a stop that you just waited for 15 minutes for the shuttle bus to show up to begin with.
No, there's not. Especially, I mean, living in LA now, I'm like 10 minutes from LAX. Whew, I've had some nightmares at this airport. So anything to like speed up the airport process.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah.
Kind of off topic, I'm just curious, I guess, for my own personal, I'm a complete volleyball layman, but is it rare to have two setters play together the way you and Katie have teamed up?
Yeah. Well, I think Katie, towards the end of her indoor career, mostly played like more of a kind of defensive specialist or libero position.
Okay.
So kind of like what she does now on the beach, like just make sure the ball never touches the ground and does amazing plays. She's fantastic. Yeah. She's like a walking highlight reel of defense. So I think in that regard, it's probably not too weird. Like I think I'm a little bit on the undersized. I'm not on a little bit. I'm definitely on the like undersized blockers side of things. So I think it's rare that kind of two small-ish players play together. But I think that our style really suits us.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely, at least my take on it was more of a finesse type game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it.
Oh, no, I mean, you know.
I say we play old lady volleyball, but
Katie's leading in the digs. You're still up there in the blockers, even though you're not one of the tallest blockers.
Yeah, I think people think I'm not there, so I get a couple sneaky blocks.
Hey, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it seems like you guys play more of a finesse, whereas some of the teams just have their 6'3", 6'4" power hitter blocker.
Mhm.
And just.
Yeah, I would say for the bigger teams, like I'm shorter than most defenders on those kind of teams that are going for kind of bigger style play and more swing focused offense.
And whereas Katie is average size in real life, in volleyball life, she's on the small side.
In volleyball side, she is tiny, but she absolutely does not play like that. I mean, she's 5'5", so yeah, like pretty normal for, again, the outside world. And then volleyball is just full of all these Amazon people who are, I feel like 6'3" is the average height sometimes. So on the women's side.
Well, I know I went to the tournament. I told the guy I was standing next to, I said, I feel pretty average size until I come here.
Right? I know. I always feel so tall in every other aspect, and then here we are.
Yeah. I'm like, Phil Dahlhauser walks by, and you're like, okay, I feel like a little child next to him.
Yeah, he is a new dimension of tall for sure.
And then there's one of the players at Hermosa was 7 feet tall. Or 6'10" or 6'11". He was huge. He was a ex-baseball player.
Yeah, there are some prototype blockers out there.
It's got to help when you don't have to jump.
Yeah, the timing's a little easier.
Exactly. Well, hey, I want to say thanks for coming on and sharing your stories. I know you have Chicago next weekend, I think.
Yeah, we'll leave Wednesday morning to head out there and go hang out for 2 days and then play the tournament.
And you're in the main draw, so you get to miss the qualifying day.
We'll be there cheering people on, but luckily do not have to play those extra matches this time.
Yeah. Well, best of luck. Where can fans or people find you? What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
I've pretty much gotten rid of all internet presence besides like LinkedIn, which I'll check once a year, and then like Instagram is where I'm at if you want to see pictures of my dog mostly, but it's at Karissa Kelly with an IE at the end.
All right. Well, now that you're not going to be a Stanford coach, you can go out and hopefully get some more sponsorships and do that type of thing.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Well, hey, best of luck, and I'll keep an eye out. Do you know if the Chicago tournament's going to be on the Amazon?
I think it will be, yeah. So it's the championship tournament. I think they'll have pretty good coverage, hopefully.
Yeah. It has great coverage on Hermosa and Manhattan Beach.
Yeah, they've been getting a lot better. It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, so I'll definitely, if you have Amazon, check it out, and then best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Hope you and Kay do really well next weekend.
I do too. Thank you.
All right. All right. Thanks, Karissa.
All right. Have a good one, Pete. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.